You're Free to Go is sponsored by Lang Realty, South Florida's premier residential real estate broker. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting a home or condo, Lang's experienced realtors are standing by ready to help you. Contact one of Lang's top realtors today at 561 703 2427. Hey everybody, You're Free to Go is back, and you're back with us, so that's exciting. Mark, guess what, Mark? Big news. This
What?
this is kind of like a half anniversary or something for us. This is episode 50, believe it or not,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Yeah, it really is hard to believe because we've been knocking them out every Friday and bring them to our listeners, and this is number 50. Yeah,
Wow.
pretty
We should
cool.
have a cake.
All right, we'll have a cake. I'll ship you. I'll take a bite and I'll ship you the other rest.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's kind
Well,
of
that's
cool.
fabulous.
Special episode, and I want you to start with a great one of your crazy ass cases. That's our theme, crazy ass cases. Although we mix in, guests at times and experts and clients and all sorts of things, questions from our listeners. But before I turn over to you, I just want to quickly share. I got this call from a victim, and this victim wanted victim representation, even though I say I'm a criminal law attorney, but we're technically criminal defense attorneys. But I say criminal law attorneys because we will represent victims. And as former prosecutors, both of us, we know how to represent a victim. Anyway, so I get this call. She tells me she's been dating a guy for a few months. They got to the point where he was sleeping over a lot. Seemed to be a good relationship. She met him at a bar, not through any friends, so she didn't know him beforehand. He's sleeping over, and one evening he I'll just be blunt. He beat the crap out of her, held her down, took her phone from her. And she was in very much fear for her life. She did not realize he had an anger side to him whatsoever. He took it really, really far. She literally saw her life flashing in front of her eyes. She was able to trick him into getting her phone back by saying she had to call her child to check her adult child, because if the child didn't hear from her, she was expecting to hear from her, that she'd get suspicious and so forth. So anyway, she was able to call 911. She tricked the guy into giving her the phone. She was able to slip a call in 911. Police came. The boyfriend was arrested, charged with serious felony strangulation. Turns out he had a criminal history she didn't know about, and so on and so forth. And she's like, so she wanted me to represent her in the process as a victim. She was scared of him, wanted to make sure there's restraining orders, all of that. So I took the call and I said, I can help you. And then at the end of the call, she says to me, this has just been the worst week, I'm like, yeah, it sounds horrible. She goes, no, you're not going to believe this either. It wasn't bad enough that I'm all black and blue and, I'm in pain and this and that. I had to go to the doctor and he beat me up, someone I thought was a great guy. She says, but 3 days after he gets arrested, my house gets robbed. She said, I had a bunch of stuff taken and it's just so upsetting to me. So I'm like, wow, this is really, 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 I understand what you're saying. What a horrible week. And, I'm kind of wrapping up the call with her and, this and that. I ask her who the police are to make, I could kind of talk to them, make sure they do their investigation properly and all. And, she says to me, when he came, the burglar, that we had one window that had a latch that wasn't working right. And he came through that window. And I'm like, Now, Mark, you and I don't have a crystal ball. We're certainly not Nostradamus or capable of predicting the future or the past, really. But we've been doing this a really long time, and sometimes we can kind of think like a criminal because we've worked with so many of them. And I started hearing this story. I heard that 3 days after her boyfriend gets arrested, her house gets robbed. I hear that there was one window with a broken latch on it. I hear that her boyfriend had been sleeping over at the house, for a month or two at this point. And I think to myself, hey, let me call the detective on this who's investigating this robbery, this burglary of your home. So I get on the phone with the detective and I say to them, hey, did you get fingerprints when you came out and inspected? She goes, yeah, we did get fingerprints. I said, have you run them yet? She said, nope, we haven't run the prints yet. We'll probably do that today or tomorrow. I said, okay. I said, I'm going to bet you right now, I'm going to bet you every dollar in my wallet that when you run those fingerprints, you're going to find that this person has a criminal record. And I'm going to ask you to look at when they were last released from jail, because I predict that that person got released within a day or two or three after this victim's boyfriend got arrested. And I'm going to bet you right now, everything I have, that that boyfriend met the burglar in the jail and gave him the information on the house and the broken window, the window with the broken latch on it. And the detective said, I doubt that. That's pretty far fetched, but we'll look into it. Well, sure as shit, Mark. No crystal ball, just doing what we've done for so many years. I was right on. Bullseye, as they say. The cop calls me back about 12 hours later. Mr. Fronstin, you were correct. You were the fingerprints matched someone with a criminal record. That person got released 2 days after this victim's boyfriend was put into the jail, and it turns out that they were cellmates. They were cellmates. So we were able to solve a burglary, and actually, now the boyfriend has additional charges because not only did he have the attempted murder, the strangulation, and so forth, and he now has the conspiracy, with the burglary of the home, which is also one of the most serious crimes. I mean, murder and breaking into someone's home, their palace, it's their private space. It's our most sacred spot, our home. Those are two of the most serious crimes there are. So I just wanted to share that situation with you. Again, we've been doing this so long, we can really we have some real insight and gut instincts on these things, and we're not always 100% right, but sometimes we are. And I was really glad for this victim who called me, and she was so appreciative that I was able to put two and two together and solve the burglary aspect of this crime. And it makes our case even stronger when we argue for the lifelong restraining order and things like that, no contact orders. So anyway, just wanted to share that little side note.
Oh, very
Yeah,
interesting. And so what actually happened? Did they arrest the fellow who they got the prints on?
they did.
And did he ever fess up to the fact that he was put up to this by the boyfriend?
Yes, he's fully cooperating because he's looking. He had a serious record as well, and he's looking at anything to cut his deal bet, make it better. And he 100% is speaking, and he's going to get a better deal for cooperating and uh, and testifying that yes, the abusive boyfriend did give him this information and tell him exactly where to go and what to steal and how to get in the house and so forth, and when this victim, what her schedule was, so he knew she wouldn't be home at the time. And he was,
Wow,
yeah, yeah. So,
that was really a great detective work by
I,
Guy Fronstin.
yeah, I'm gonna have a little
We
a side hustle as a
really,
PI.
really, really should have a TV show and
Uh,
have you as a play a detective,
right.
like Columbo.
Yeah.
Actually, they're rebooting that, and I believe I saw something where Mark Ruffalo
Oh wow,
um,
he's perfect.
yeah, he's perfect. He's got that hair, and
Yeah,
he looks perfect.
yeah,
He's got that demeanor.
he
He's
does.
supposed to be playing Columbo. That'd be great. The
Oh,
old Peter Falk role.
yep.
But I have a case I wanted to tell our listeners about. You know, a lot of times I'm asked, given the nature of the practice I've had over the years, was I ever in a situation when I was really scared? And I did share an earlier episode with our viewers, our listeners, um, a case that I had when I was a prosecutor, and I thought that I was the subject of a hit. But when I was a defense attorney, I had another situation, kind of unusual, but nevertheless scary. And I wanted to sort of lay it out for our listeners. First of all, I had a client come to me, referred to me during the what we called the cocaine cowboys days in Miami
What were
in the
those years?
80s.
The 80s, yeah.
In the 80s, and I he was a Cuban American um, drug dealer who got arrested and managed to bond out before I even took on the case. And he was charged in federal court with a conspiracy to import and to distribute a large amount of cocaine. It's a very large case. And I was kind of surprised, frankly, that he was even able to bond out. And then I found out that his bond was $6 million, which means that he paid the bondsman 15% of that, which was what, $990,000.
Wait,
I don't know. It's a
the,
ridiculous amount of money.
yeah, there's a lot of money, and he doesn't get
Yeah.
that money back. I mean,
No,
we've
he
talked,
doesn't get that money back.
we've done an episode on bonds if people miss that
Right.
one. Basically, that's the
So
vig, that's the bondsman's profit, and yeah, and if you don't show
I
up,
knew
they
he
come
had the
after you.
money.
Yep.
I knew he had the money to pay the bond, and therefore I knew he had the money to pay my fee. And I charged him a good fee, and he insisted on going to trial. And it was a case that was being primarily made by two witnesses who had worked under him in the distribution scheme. And they got arrested too. And it turns out that they were cooperating. Um, and of course, as we know, that's how a lot of these cases are made. They're made by people involved in the criminal conspiracy getting a better sentence opportunity by testifying
Sure.
against someone more seriously involved. In this case, the Jefe, the head of the group. And so we were going to trial, and frankly, I was working very hard in preparing my cross examination of each. I'd gotten a lot of information about their prior criminal history, instances when they had lied about other things. So I was prepared for the witness stand, for them to take the witness stand and try to excoriate them. We get to trial, and after a couple of days of set up testimony by police officers and customs people, when the boats showed up on shore laden with cocaine, they got intercepted. Um, uh, there was time to put on the main cooperating witness. And I remember that morning showing up at court and looking at the prosecutor, whose face was sort of an ashen gray. He turned pale when somebody leaned over his shoulder and talked to him. And he sat there motionless for a minute. And I walked over. I said, is there some issue going on here? He said, well, our next witness was killed last night. I
Mm.
said, oh, really?
Thought
He
that only
said, yeah.
happens in movies, you know?
Right. And he says, and we think your client was behind it. I said, do you have any evidence of it? He said, not at this point. I said, well, I think you would be really foolish to raise that with the court. In fact, if you do, I'm going to move for a mistrial right away. And so he didn't say anything and proceeded to call the next witness, who was not an important witness, didn't actually know my client. I had fun cross examining and pointing out that he didn't know anything about my client, didn't know my client was involved. And then they were waiting to bring in the next witness, who was the second cooperator. And the judge broke for lunch. We came back from lunch, and was sitting, and I see the prosecutor look over at him, and he's slumped in his chair.
Oh boy.
And
More bad
said,
news?
I said, what's going on? He said, we can't reach, I forget the name of the fellow, can't reach my witness. I said, no, are you serious? He said, no, we can't reach them. We don't know what to tell the court. So,
This would
needless to say,
one witness says was murdered,
one witness is dead
and
and the
now
other
he can't
witness
reach
is
another.
missing.
So they're
Yeah.
thinking possibly also murdered, or okay,
Well, they don't know. At this
right?
point, they just can't reach him. They said that they went. You see, he told me that DEA agents went by his house. He wasn't there.
Mm.
Called him on his phone. He was supposed to meet them at their office,
Sure.
and he just disappeared. So, of course, you could immediately ascribe foul play, but at the same time, it could be that he was just afraid to take the witness stand, and he just skedaddled.
Right. Now, what typically
Um,
happens in that situation, because it happens a lot, like we're calling witnesses, they're calling witnesses. We'll say to the judge, we had a witness scheduled, we're having problem locating them. They were scheduled to be here. They've been in contact with us throughout this case for the last 2 years, whatever. We'd like a quick recess to figure out what's going on. And typically, unless there's some other reason, some other time pressures going on, judges are usually reasonable and they'll say, okay, we'll give you 10
Well,
minutes.
you're exactly right.
Yeah.
That's what happened here.
Okay.
Prosecutor told the judge, didn't say anything about the death of the first witness, just said that he was unavailable. Um, and as far as the missing witness now, he said, Judge, we trying to reach him, and I don't have anybody else scheduled for today.
Yeah.
And the judge was angry because judges don't like to keep juries waiting. They don't like to prolong trials. They got other cases backing up, waiting to be tried. So he said, all right, I'm going to give you till tomorrow morning. But if your witness doesn't show tomorrow morning, you're going to have to call somebody else or move forward or whatever.
Yeah. And
Well,
I do respect that judges are very cognizant of not keeping jurors out of their normal life routine, their livelihood, their work, not even for a second longer than necessary. They do like to
yeah,
keep these
that's
trials
common.
moving so everyone can get back to their daily routine. And I've never met a judge who didn't have that, philosophy or culture about them. So I do respect that. Yeah.
That's a fact. And that's
But
what happened
but they
here.
also
And
have to balance the constitutional rights of a defendant, the right to present their defense. So it's a tough challenge for judges to balance that.
that's right.
Yeah.
So in any event, what happened is the judge, adjourned for the day. And I actually turned to my client as we were walking out the courtroom because he was on bond. And I said, please tell me you've had nothing to do with this. He said, oh, no, I don't know. These guys just got scared. Or they realized that you were going to rip them apart. You had a lot of information about crimes they did that were never disclosed to the government. You were going to expose them. They probably figured that out. They figured out that I was going to tell you everything.
That's
So I'm sure that they left.
that's
I
very
said, what about the
that's
guy who was dead?
yeah, that's reasonable and plausible actually. But yeah, how do you explain that someone's dead, right?
Yeah, so he said, "Well, I can't tell you. I mean, the guy was up to his ears in all sorts of shit, so anybody could have had it out for him."
Right.
But so I had no option but to believe my client at that time, although I was highly suspicious. But I didn't know at that time that my client was prone to violence.
When you said
Um,
the witness was dead, did you capture any type of response from your client that was surprising or to you?
no,
No.
no, he was cool as a cucumber.
Right.
um, which is either he's a stone cold killer or he was innocent of it. But he didn't feign surprise, and at the same time, he didn't in any way give up anything that made me more suspicious. So we come into court the next morning. Prosecutor stands up and announces to the judge that the witness is missing and that at this point in time, the prosecution rests its case, has no other witnesses. They were looking to finish up on a high note with these two cooperating witnesses. They'd already gotten all the evidence of the seizures into into the trial, into evidence in front of the jury.
Mhm.
So I made a motion to dismiss the case based on the fact that no reasonable juror could find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt based on the evidence that was present at the time, even viewed in the light most favorable to the government, which is the standard that the
Right.
judges applied. Reluctantly, the judge dismissed the case.
Wow.
Um,
But our listeners need to understand that that is extremely, extremely, extremely rare. That-
Very rare. I've only had it happen twice
yeah.
in my 50 years of trying cases.
Probably less than
So,
5% of the time, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's
So,
good.
in any event, we go our way. My client is thrilled. He's patting me on the back. He's having a party that night
Huh.
to celebrate. He invited me, but I didn't go. And I don't remember the reasons why I didn't go, but I just didn't feel comfortable around him. And I was happy that the case was over. He was free to go,
Yeah. Free to go.
and uh, and he left. Fast forward about 2 years later, I hadn't heard from him, heard nothing. 2 years later, I get a call from his wife. I had met his wife. She called, she said, Umberto, that's the name I'm giving him. That's not his real name, was arrested last night on this massive drug case.
Oh boy.
And he's in jail. Um, So I immediately went to see him. It was an enormous amount of cocaine that was intercepted, and the boat captain gave him up. There were phone calls to him. They got the boat captain's cell phone. They saw the calls to him. They saw messages, uh, and so
Yeah.
they had him pretty bad.
You know, I always
And I
I
went to
always
see him.
wonder when someone gets so lucky, they do something, they're accused of a crime, they get arrested, they go through the whole system, they're looking at some serious, serious, serious prison time, and they win. I always think, boy, what a wake up call. That person's never going to step out of line ever again. But so often they do. I don't know if it's because they feel like I'm untouchable. I can do it. I'll win again. I'll hire that great, expensive lawyer, Mark Nurick. He'll get me off again. I don't know. It's a psychology behind it, or they just feel like that's the only way they know how to make a living. I don't know. But the psychology is always,
Well, he
interested me.
became used to a very high level of
Lifestyle.
living,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lifestyle that obviously he was not an educated man, had no real skills. His ostensible business, according to the government in his tax returns, he did file taxes, was he owned gas stations.
Okay.
And by that point in time, nobody really looked into how those gas stations had been bought, whether or not they were money laundering operations, whatever.
Mm.
But he was clearly not the kind of person who was going to sustain his lifestyle simply by the gas stations or by any other means.
Right.
So, and he got used to it. And
But
look, greed is a very important aspect of the human experience.
yes,
I always say, for one for greed, I'd be out of business
that's true.
because my clients are all greedy in one respect or another.
Yeah.
So in any event, I get a call from the wife. I go down to see him. We go to a bond hearing. This time, the magistrate uh, uh, determined that he was going to be pretrial detained because he was a flight risk and a danger to the community. We actually appealed that to the district judge, went nowhere. So he's sitting in jail. And I'm working on defending the case. And one day I get a call from the prosecutor on the new case, and he says, "Listen, we have your client cold. We uh, we know that he had something to do with the murder of the witness in the first case he
Mhm.
had.
It's the same
If he's
prosecutor or no?
No, different prosecutor. This
Yeah.
was 2 years
But
later.
they were fully aware
Um,
of the first case and
yeah,
what happened.
they
Yeah.
knew because the agents, the DE
They all
agents, I
talk.
think one of the agents was the same agent on the first case.
Sure.
So he said to me, "Look, um, if your client is willing to give up the shooter, we know he wasn't the shooter because we know he would had an alibi. If he's willing to give up the shooter and plead to this, we will make him a deal. Otherwise, eventually we're going to find the shooter.
Hmm.
The shooter's going to cooperate against him, and he's going down big time on this case anyway."
Yeah.
So I went to my client, and because I'm duty bound,
Correct.
as you know,
Mhm.
ethically, to relay all offers to the client, whether I think they're worthwhile or not,
Yes,
whether
you
I
are.
recommend them or not. I am duty bound to mention it. So I went to see him in the jail. I remember this day very vividly. We were up in a visiting room in the federal facility, and I said to him, "Look, this is what the prosecutor's offering. I'm not saying that you off this guy, but if you had something to do with it, this is your opportunity. Because frankly, the case against you, Umberto, in this case, you're a dead duck.
Mm.
There's no way we're going to win a trial, given your past, given the sheer weight of the cocaine. In this case, you're going away for at least 20 plus years, maybe longer."
Right.
Um, so he said, "Look," he said, "I'm going to be honest with you." He said, "I did have the guy killed,
Oh boy.
but there's no way I'm going to talk about it because I'd be a fool. I'm going to admit to a more serious crime. They're going to give me a deal on that. I'm going to wind up with life.
Right.
So I'd
That would
rather
be
take
a
my chances
right.
on this trial."
That would be a great deal. Get life instead of death. Right. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I understand how
But
he's
he
looking
said,
at it.
I'm not willing to do that. I'm just not willing to say anything." And so then I'm saying to myself, okay, he's now admitted to a murder.
Yes.
He didn't give me the details. He said he had somebody, one of the members of his
Right.
organization, do it.
Yeah.
um,
And
came at his direction.
under the bar rules and the ethics and so forth, anything that our clients tell us from the past is part of the attorney-client privilege. It's confidential. If our client tells us, "I'm going to have someone killed," or "I'm going to commit a crime in the future," then we're not bound by attorney-client privilege. We actually have an obligation to try to do something to prevent the client from committing a crime. But he's telling you something he did in the past, you are bound by confidentiality. So you're in a real dilemma now. Yeah, where do you
Yeah, in a real dilemma. I cannot mention it, obviously, and it's a past crime. Um, you're absolutely right. Only future crimes or continuing crimes. I may
continuing?
have
Yeah,
mentioned in an earlier episode about a client who was a fugitive and told me where he was. Well, being a fugitive, it's a continuing crime.
right.
So when he told me where he was, I had no privilege if I was asked about it. In fact, I even told the prosecutor, and that was the case where we went to visit the client in Portugal. That was a story we told earlier.
Yes,
In any event, so he tells me this, and so I contact the prosecutor. I said, "Well, um, there's nothing to talk about here." I didn't want to say he didn't do it. I didn't want to say he did it. I just said, "There's nothing to talk about here," and he could assume whatever he wants.
yeah.
Um, so we're about to go to trial, and the prosecutor calls me one day. He says, "Well, client made a bad mistake." I said, "What was that?" He said, "Should have taken the deal. We've got him cold.
We found the shooter.
We've traced everything to the shooter.
Huh.
Turns out that there was a witness on the scene who recognized the car and two letters of the plate.
Wow.
Somehow the police were able to track it. They got to the shooter, and the shooter gave up your client instantly.
And what's interesting, you said
And
earlier, this is about 2 years earlier that that happened, right?
right,
Yeah,
2 years
so
earlier.
there was still an open
So
investigation. Yeah.
I I went to see my client to tell him this. And I saw a side of him that scared the hell out of me.
Mm.
He got so violently angry and angry at me. And he said, "You gave me up."
Huh.
I said, "I gave you up? You didn't even tell me who you hired.
Right.
What are you talking about?" He said, "You gave me up, you son of a bitch."
Ooh.
Walked right out of the room.
Mhm.
Now I'm getting concerned.
Yes.
All right.
So
Because I don't know. I mean, clearly at this point, he thinks I'm the one who fingered him on this,
right.
that I broke the privilege, which clearly I didn't. Um, so
And just
I'm wondering what I'm going to do now because a couple of times I went down to see him. The next day, I actually went down, figured he calmed up. He didn't show up. The visiting room told me, officer told me he refused to come down.
right, he's not coming.
He's not coming. So twice he didn't come down to see me. So now I'm thinking to myself, he's not cooperating with me anymore. I'm going
Yeah,
to have to withdraw as his attorney.
exactly.
And I'm just going to have to tell the court he's not cooperating with me anymore.
Hmm.
And then one day I'm in my office, and the receptionist in the suite calls me and says, "There are two gentlemen here looking to see you."
Oh,
And I said, "Who are they?" He said, "I don't know, but they're two Hispanic gentlemen looking to come see you. And they said that they're here on behalf of Umberto."
uh-huh.
So now I'm getting really concerned. I'm going to get shot in my own office.
Right.
Now, at the time, I had a Browning 9mm properly registered
Okay.
in my drawer.
Mm.
Uh, and I opened the drawer, I looked at that damn thing and said, "I'm not going to get to it fast enough
Right.
if I need to." I'm not Dirty Harry, and
And you got 2
not
people.
Wyatt Earp, so
And
I don't know what I'm going to
there's
do.
2 people coming, not just 1. Yeah. Yep.
So they come in, and I'm honestly probably as scared as I've ever been as a lawyer
Right. I would.
because I don't know what's going to happen. My client won't. Client believes I gave him up. My client won't communicate with me. and two guys show up to see me out of the blue.
Yep. Usually we feel safe with our clients because we're the only one fighting for their freedom and to save their life. So they want to be nice to us and have us love them and protect them. They're, but not this guy. He thinks you set him up. You turned him in. So yeah. So this is a very adversarial situation now. Very scary.
So I'm trying to decide. I'm literally, Guy, I'm trying to decide whether or not, because the way the office was configured then, I could easily get out the back
Yeah.
and just make believe and, make believe I'm not there or, hide somewhere. And for a minute, I was thinking about that. And then I realized, no, these guys are not going to shoot me
Mm.
in my own office in
Right.
front of everybody else.
Right.
So I said, all right, send them back. Kept my drawer open with
Uh,
the gun.
just in case.
These guys come in. Turns out they were pretty large fellas, too. Fat, but
Just,
they were large.
or,
Okay.
it adds
I
to the
sat down in the
adds to
chair
the drama. I love it. Okay.
and I'm waiting for one of the guys to speak. I said, yes, I understand you want to see me about Umberto. How are you guys connected to this? And one guy says, well, Umberto's my cousin and this is my friend, and we're here to help straighten this situation out. And I get really concerned.
Yeah.
And I said, and what does that mean? He said, we're here to apologize on behalf of Umberto.
Oh, what a relief.
Okay.
Uh,
Just
right?
he said,
Oh, God.
Umberto discovered who fingered him, and clearly it wasn't you. I said, how did he discover this? He said, we don't know. He just said for us to come over, see you right away,
Oh,
apologize. He wasn't even gonna, and to go see him as soon as possible, and to tell you that he is very, very sorry. And as proof of that, the guy reaches in his pocket, pull out a gun. But I figured at that point, no, hands me an envelope.
oh, what an honorable criminal he was.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And in the envelope was $5,000 in cash.
Okay. Honorable, sensitive, and generous.
And I said, you know what? I said, I don't take cash. He wants to pay me. You guys can arrange to give me a check or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
at that point in time, I was of the practice not to accept cash.
of
The
course.
government was going after, you never know where this cash comes from.
That's right.
Government was starting to go after defense attorneys. Theoretically, if you know it's from criminal activity, it
Yeah.
suspects from criminal activity,
Yep.
to be guilty of money laundering,
Yeah,
whatever.
no,
I didn't want to.
I defended a criminal defense lawyer once who took dirty money, and the cops said it was all
Right.
set up, and he took the cash, and he had got arrested. I had to defend him. Yeah, yeah.
So, and the PS to the story is we go to trial, and on the third day of trial, one of the jurors has a heart attack.
Oh God.
Okay. Not in the courtroom, but apparently leaving for that day. And by then, we'd already lost. The judge, for some reason, only picked two alternates. And and I don't know if we've ever explained to our listeners what that means, but basically, when you have a jury in federal court, a jury of 12, judges always pick alternate juries. These are people who sit and listen to the entire case as though they're the regular jurors. All the evidence is presented in front of them. And then when the time comes that the case is over and the jury goes in to deliberate, they don't join the jury. They're there in case somebody has to be replaced. Of course, if somebody has to be replaced during deliberation, the rule is that the jury has to start all over again in deliberating
Correct.
because they have to give this person the benefit of
Yeah.
of being part of it. Um,
And I
and
find
if you lose a juror during the course of the evidence presentation, that juror who's already listened to everything just sits in that
right.
replacement seat.
I
But what happens is sometimes you lose in a long trial, you can lose people to sickness, to family situations, God forbid, death or whatever. And then what happens is you use your alternate juries to fill the slots. Well, by then we had already lost enough jurors that when the juror had the heart attack,
Mm.
we only had one juror left,
Alternate.
one alternate left. That alternate replaced that person. And then a couple of days later, we had someone else get sick and came down with some kind of contagion, some kind of
Oh,
flu. And the end result was the judge had to declare a mistrial.
sure.
So here he wasn't convicted. Now the government's going to retry him again. This time, the prosecutor comes back to me and says, look, we're going to make him a real sweetheart deal because we already have him on the murder charge, which we're going to prosecute him for. Okay. If if your client agrees to plead guilty to second-degree murder in the state system and faces a sentence on that, we will agree to a what they call a coterminous sentence here, meaning it runs concurrent with the sentence in the state system, and it ends when the state sentence ends.
Right.
So now I have to turn around and try to negotiate a deal with the state court prosecutor. Bottom line, he wound up with 18 years.
Wow.
He agreed to plead 18 years for a combination of a giant drug deal that he would have wound up doing about 30 years under the guidelines
Hmm.
or more, and a murder case that he could have potentially gotten life or the death penalty. And he wound up with 18 years.
Wow.
And that was an example of plea bargaining, which a lot of people have problems with, and I understand, but that's how the system works.
Sure. Yep. No, that was for him. It was a good outcome. And for people who think he got off easy, he's off the streets for a very long period of time. So that was a good outcome though for you.
Well, I mean, it was a good outcome for him, and I'd
Yeah.
have to say it was a great outcome for me
Yeah.
because I didn't get shot in my office.
Yes. That would have been traumatic for everybody. And we wouldn't have had your free to go for all our members,
That's
our
right.
fans. Um, and by the way, I've had when we get to the end of the trial and we tell jurors, or the judge says to the jurors, "Oh, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, Miss, Davis, you three were alternates, and let me tell you what that means. You don't get to go in the room and deliberate." I find that like 50% of the time, those alternates are very disappointed. They sat there, they paid attention, they listened, and they want to be part of it.
They did the work.
Yeah, they did the work, and they want to have say in the outcome. And 50% of the time, they're like, "Oh, I'm relieved. I didn't want to have to make a decision here anyway. It's too serious. It's too overwhelming. It's. So it's very interesting to see their reaction when they find out that they were the alternate, because they don't know till that last
Yeah.
second. Yeah,
I think that they feel that they were taken advantage of the
yeah,
times that I've seen, and I've had hundreds of cases and alternates.
yeah,
Most of the time, you're right, they're disappointed. And, the fact is, if they've sat for a week or 2 week or a month or a multiple month trial, they've
yeah.
already put in the work. They know that deliberation isn't going to take that long.
That's right.
So they're willing to be part of it. They want to now have their say.
Yeah,
They've
yeah.
sat there listening. Now they want to speak.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's interesting to see their reaction. Um, I'm going to share a relatively short story on a crazy case. I think the listeners will enjoy. And I want to remind everyone to please like, follow, and subscribe. Subscribing is free. We're getting tons and tons of viewers on YouTube and TikTok and so forth. But also when you watch, those are the little clips. But when you listen to this full episode, please make sure you like, follow, and subscribe as well. Send in comments. We love hearing from you all. So the case I'm going to share with you is my client, the defendant, was making over $2 million a year. She was a very high earning employee who called me. Basically, this is about greed, a case about greed. It's a white collar crime. When people hear that, it means it's a business crime. He wasn't happy with $2 million. He wanted to make more. His role was he was a director of IT, anything related to IT, meaning, well, let me just say, I'm not going to say who he worked for, and I'll explain why in a few minutes. But basically, let's say it was like the equivalent of like a cruise line or a large hotel chain, like an international hotel chain or international restaurant chain or hospital or retail theft chain. So it was a company that was worldwide. The IT was his role as the director of this huge company making $2 million a year. Was anything related to IT. He ran the internet program, and he had a ton of employees. If there were like fobs or security cards, like the credit card, like the door key cards that you would have, the cameras, the computer systems, the AI, everything related to IT, he was responsible for. And we're going to call it for a cruise line because that's just sexy. I love cruises, and it would sound cool to say he was the director of IT for an entire cruise line all over the world. So one of his responsibilities was approving invoices. So in the role of in regard to IT, there's so many things involved in running these big international businesses that he'd have over 100 invoices a month that would come through for, let's say, for example, Salesforce, which is, let's just make that hypothetical. Everything's here hypothetical to keep attorney-client privilege. So Salesforce was the software they were using to keep track of, their client data and things like that. So he would get an invoice from them monthly. The internet service provider, he got a bill from them. The company that provided the little door key cards that look like a credit card, they would bill him every month, et cetera, et cetera. There were, like I said, over 100 invoices a month that he was responsible for reviewing and approving, and then the corporate entity would pay all those bills. So this is basically what the hypothetical or what the allegations were that was happening. The door key card company that would bill him was called, the company name hypothetically was ABC Incorporated. That was the company that would bill him an invoice for the key cards that they would supply them with every month. And let's say that bill was $350 for the month. He would prepare, the defendant would be the one to review it and pay the bill and approve the bill and have it paid by the comptroller and so forth. Well, in this case, he prepared a company and an invoice for a company called ABC Corporation. So remember, the real company was called ABC Incorporated. He prepares a company called ABC, an invoice for a company called ABC Corporation, the little nuance between Incorporated Inc. versus Corp, for $350 a month. So very easy to slip that through because the dollar amount seems right and the name seems right unless you really look closely. The company that provides the phone systems, to his company was called Phones, the letter R, Us. So Phones R Us at $3,000 a month. Well, he created invoices from a company called Phones R Us, Phones A-R-E, Us, at $3,000 a month. So the name, it looks very familiar. In one, it just says the letter R for Phones R Us. The other, it says Phones A-R-E, Us. Same dollar amount. So that kind of goes under the radar as well. He did that for all these different, not all 100 plus vendors, but for many, many, many vendors. So it added up to well over $1 million over like a 2-year period. So in addition to his $2 million salary, he pulled out another $1 million through these fraudulent invoices. Now, what was interesting too is because the company he worked for was all over the world, it wasn't unusual for them to see that the invoices were being paid to accounts outside of the United States, and it wasn't suspicious, again because a lot of the employees were international employees. Some of the corporate entities of the people of who he worked for that had lots of locations were registered outside the U.S. So when these invoices that he created came in for very similar names, the right dollar amount and out of the country payment, it didn't catch anyone's eye through normal, daily routine or auditing and so forth. The defendant then opened bank accounts with these fake company names outside of the United States. And when the defendant thought he was under investigation, which it turned out when he thought that, wow, I think they're catching on, that's when he hired me. So it was before he was ever arrested or charged. He said, I think they're he got a little nervous. I think they're catching on. So he hires me, which was a smart decision. I then engage in phone calls and in-person meetings with, again, we'll call it a cruise ship company, Engage with their executive team, their legal counsel. Eventually, law enforcement gets involved, and we're having pretty in-depth, frequent, regular conversations with them. Basically, everything they're throwing at me, I'm coming back with responses and defenses to, and so forth. And the good news is this client of mine was so incredibly smart. That's part of these white collar crimes very often, where it's just about greed. It's an addiction to money, to wanting more and more than you have. Most of the time, these clients are making a lot of money. They typically are very, very smart people.
Which
And
doesn't make sense. I mean,
right?
people, and this is what, by the way, sorry to interrupt,
Oh,
but
okay.
I think our jurors need, our
That's right.
listeners need to understand this, that when jurors hear about somebody who is already well off, um, and or comfortable, and then on top of it is greedy to get more money, it becomes very offensive to them, because the average person on the jury is just, a blue collar worker, or somebody who may be retired,
You're
who's
right.
thinking about, do I have enough money for the rest of my life? Bottom line is, they resent that. So right away, your client has one foot in the grave in a trial.
You're so right. They're very hard to defend that. You're right. Um, so my goal at this point is I got to make sure we never go to a trial, right? So I'm fighting really hard. And my client, honest, frankly, I don't want to take credit for it. My client was so brilliant. I mean, from a criminal defense perspective, he brilliantly created, he had a criminal mind in creating the system that was so sophisticated, and he made it so complicated that the cops couldn't really put it together. It's a puzzle. They have to put a puzzle together. All the pieces have to fit so they can present it to get an indictment, present it to get to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt, and so forth and so on. And they were having a really hard time putting all the pieces together. Plus the fact that things were out of the country, the bank accounts and so forth. So it was very difficult. The cops and we'll call it a cruise ship, the company, they knew beyond all doubt that my client had done this. They absolutely knew he was embezzling the money, but they just weren't able to really prove it. So we kept going back and forth. And we decided, with my clients' input and so forth, I decided we can't go in front of a jury. We got to keep it out of the court system. We always want to avoid having our clients arrested, of course. So I was in heavy negotiations with them. The advantage we had was that it was so complicated and sophisticated and brilliant that they realized that they were going to have a hard time proving it, even though they knew he did it. So we worked on a settlement agreement. And I can't go into detail about the case and confidential issues, because the truth is we were successful. They never filed any criminal charges. He was never arrested.
Wow.
But we could.
How did that happen?
So we reached a settlement with them. It's very benign. My client agreed to resign. He agreed to that he would waive. He had a big bonus coming in. It was six figures, a couple, if I don't remember exactly, but it was over like $200,000 bonus coming in. He agreed to waive that. He agreed to say nothing disparaging about his employer. They most importantly, they agreed in the settlement that they would say there was no finding of guilt or wrongdoing on my client's part. They just wanted him out and gone and have nothing to do with him ever again. And they were, of course, disappointed that they weren't able to prosecute him, but they knew they weren't going to get anywhere with it. The cops realized that. The lawyers at the company realized that. Now, often, these companies want to prosecute, so they send an example to all their employees that, hey, you steal from us, you're going down hard. But the truth
There's
is,
another reason for that too,
what's
that I
that?
discovered,
What?
and that is that, um, a lot of times when they're not able to collect the money that's stolen, embezzled, or fraudulently obtained, um, they have insurance policies.
Yes.
And in order to trigger the insurance policy, they need to prove that there was a criminal act that had actually happened. So prosecuting the person successfully is an important aspect of the insurance
Right.
uh, policy process. and so that's how they collect.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times there's what they call
Yeah.
you know,
Errors and
executive
omissions.
and officer errors and omissions,
Yeah.
and they cover for officers and directors, and so it often happens that they seek almost universally seek prosecution, and that's your client was very lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, he was so lucky, and with the settlement was very favorable to him. And so unbeknownst to me, before he even hired me, but he started to realize that I think it was even before he knew that the executive team at his company was suspecting that he was embezzling. But it was around that same time. I think he knew maybe the walls were closing in because so forth. So he actually had hired a headhunter, and I guess a talent recruiter, talent. I think they call them talent recruiters nowadays. When I was younger, they were headhunters, people who,
Yeah, headhunters
yeah,
sounds like a cannibal, but
right. So now I think they're called like talent recruiters or something.
right,
So,
euphemisms.
yes. So he had actually hired a company to, find him a new job before he was ever officially under investigation. And so I think he knew that it was getting close. So he was a smart guy. So that was unbeknownst to me because when I settled the case, I said to him, "So what are you going to do now for make a living?" He said, "Well, I actually already have a job offer for making more money. The background has already cleared on me, and I'm gonna make more money. I've already accepted it. I have a starting date in like I think it was like 45 days. He was gonna take a little month-long vacation, and the best thing, again, this was before we even had, he hired me before the settlement was just negotiated and he signed off on. So he, the company that he stole from, they had no idea that he already had another offer involved. And my client said, and I'm not even worried about having this offer withdrawn because you were so great, meaning I was so great in getting this settlement to say and negotiated to get them
A non-disparagement.
non-disparagement and no finding of wrongdoing
Ah,
whatsoever. And it was a confidential settlement. So he's like, they can't even say anything. They can't even call when they find out where I'm working, and happen to be a competitor. They can't even call them and say, hey, you better get rid of this guy during his 90-day trial period or probation period because he stole over $1 million from us. So he's like,
wow.
so
We should do a an episode on confidential settlements
yes,
because they're always very much in the news, and people have different opinions about them, and they
true.
often serve to thwart any disclosure of information that could protect other people from someone who is prone to do it again.
No, you're right. You're right. It comes in play not necessarily in the criminal world, but in the employment world when,
Yeah.
what employers can't really disclose why someone was fired or let go and so forth. So, you know, I, it's hard, when we defend someone and they did something wrong and we're worried that they may do this to somebody else. Of course, I've heard from this client a little bit over the years, and he swears that he's never done it again. He promised he wouldn't, and the couple times I've talked to him, he says everything's going well with life, and I hope that's true. But we talked
But he's a
through.
sneaky little bastard.
Yeah, sneaky. You combine the formula of sneaky and brilliant, and willing to cross
Yeah,
the
yeah.
line. That's
Well,
tough,
most of my clients on the white collar side are very smart, and I often wonder, boy, if they had applied all of that talent
right?
to something constructive, we would be in a much better world.
This is so true.
Um,
Yes, it is. So,
you know, and that, by the way, it's interesting because years ago, um, I hooked up with somebody who was trying to start a project, and the project was designed to recognize all the brilliant brain power of all these white collar criminals who are just wasting years and years in jail, costing the public a ton of money to house them and doing nothing when they could do things um, very, very constructive as part of their sentence,
yeah,
and be involved and that way to shave their sentence down or to be some form of house arrest or whatever. Unfortunately, the reality is, while that probably would make more sense if you screened the people properly and you had the right white collar criminals take advantage of that, it's not going to ever work, because the driving force at the end of the day in the criminal justice system is not rehabilitation, it's not restitution, it's punishment.
Correct. And that wouldn't be a
And we know that as defense attorneys
right.
doing hundreds, if not
Yeah.
thousands, of sentencing.
Yeah. And then not only would it not be punishment to them, but it's also inequitable to the guy, who's sitting in the cell next to him who got convicted but doesn't have a high education, a big success, that
Doesn't have the
the
capability of.
capabilities,
You're right.
why, he doesn't,
You're
it's
right.
not fair that he didn't get this opportunity just because he doesn't have those life successes and so forth, skill set. So anyway, another great episode, Mark, as always. Fun to be with you.
This was a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and we've got a lot more to tell our viewers about in the future. And
We sure do.
we got to make sure that they subscribe.
I love it, Mark. You got this.
And I finally caught on to that.
Yeah,
We
like,
need them to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything,
yeah.
and it'll keep us going as well. And so, ladies and gentlemen, until the next time, you're free
Free
to
to
go.
go. Everything expressed and discussed in this episode are the opinions and experiences of attorneys Guy Fronstin and Mark Nurick and their guests. All ethical rules are complied with. Attorney-client privilege and confidential information is not shared or released during these episodes, and names, dates, locations, and other identifying information may be changed to protect confidentiality. Topics are embellished, and none of the statements made constitute legal advice and should not be considered or relied on as such.